Hey everyone, I'm Morgan. Today I want to share something that changed the entire trajectory of my life. A story about perception, prejudice, and the power of staying true to yourself even when the world seems determined to misunderstand you. If or you've ever been judged unfairly, labeled before someone really knew you, or felt like you were fighting an uphill battle to prove your worth, this story might resonate with you. It's about how my husband's family spent years calling me a gold digger, only to discover that I secretly owned the very company that employed them all. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Sometimes life has a way of revealing the truth in the most unexpected and satisfying ways. This is that story. I grew up in a small town in Oregon, where everyone knew everyone else's business and ambition was often viewed with suspicion. My parents worked incredibly hard, my dad as a mechanic, and my mom juggling 2 jobs as a nurse's aide and weekend cashier. They instilled in me the value of hard work, education, and financial independence from an early age. "Morgan," my dad would say, "the most valuable thing you can have in this world isn't money, it's the ability to make your own." That stuck with me. By 16, I was working part-time at the local diner while maintaining straight A's. By 18, I had earned a full scholarship to study business at a prestigious university on the East Coast. The scholarship covered tuition, but living expenses were another story. I worked 3 different campus jobs, lived on ramen, and saved every penny I could. My classmates went to parties. I went to the library or work. They bought new clothes. I shopped at thrift stores. They took spring break trips. I picked up extra shifts. But I never felt deprived. In fact, I was building something more valuable than most 20-somethings could imagine: financial literacy and business acumen that would serve me for life. During my junior year, I witnessed something that would change everything. The tech startup founded by one of our university's alumni got acquired for a staggering amount. The founder was only 27. Watching her speak at our business symposium, explaining how she identified a market gap and built a solution, I had an epiphany. I didn't need to follow the traditional corporate ladder. I could build something myself. That summer, instead of taking an internship at a big firm like most of my classmates, I developed a business plan for a software company specializing in supply chain management solutions for small to mid-sized businesses, a sector that larger software companies overlooked, but one that I knew intimately from my parents' struggles with their small auto shop. I called it Chain Link Solutions, using the $7,000 I had saved over 3 years, living on basically nothing. Has its benefits, and a small loan from my parents' credit union, I launched the company from my dorm room. The first 2 years were brutal, coding late into the night, cold calling potential clients, facing rejection after rejection. But slowly, things started to click. By the time I graduated, Chainlink had 5 clients, 2 part-time developers. I paid in equity, and just enough revenue to cover operating costs. I took a day job at a consulting firm to pay my bills while nurturing my company on nights and weekends. Every cent of profit went back into the business. While my peers were buying new cars and taking exotic vacations with their first real paychecks, I was living in a tiny studio apartment with furniture I found on the street, eating the same meal, prep for days, and investing in server space and developer talent. My family worried about me. "Morgan, you're working yourself to death," my mom would say during our weekly calls. "When was the last time you went on a date? Or even just out with friends?" The truth was, I barely had a social life. But Chainlink was growing faster than I dared hope. By year 3, we had secured a contract with a regional supermarket chain that put us on the map. By year 4, we had 15 employees and had moved into real office space. By year 5, we were profitable enough that I could quit my day job and draw a modest salary as CEO. I was 27, running a successful tech company valued at several $1 million, but nobody would have known it looking at me. I still lived modestly, drove a used car, and rarely splurged on anything. Not because I couldn't afford to, but because that's just who I was. Money meant security and opportunity to me, not status or luxury. That's when I met Jason Thompson. It was at a charity gala in Boston that one of our client companies had invited me to. I almost didn't go. Networking events weren't really my scene, and I felt out of place in formal settings. But my COO, Rachel, insisted it would be good for business. Besides, she said with a wink, you might actually meet someone if you leave your apartment for something other than work. Jason was bartending at the event. Not as a career, he explained he did it on weekends to supplement his income. As a high school history teacher, I liked that immediately. Someone who wasn't afraid of honest work, who didn't think certain jobs were beneath him. He was handsome in an approachable way, warm brown eyes, a smile that reached them, and a quick wit that made me laugh genuinely. For the first time in months, when he offered me a drink, I asked for club soda with lime. He raised an eyebrow. Designated driver? He asked. Just not much of a drinker, I replied. Plus, I have to review some code commits later tonight. On a Saturday night, what kind of taskmaster do you work for? I smiled. The worst kind. Me. His eyes widened slightly, but he didn't ask the questions most people did. What company? How big? How successful? Instead, he asked, do you love it? Your work? That simple question, focused on fulfillment rather than achievement, was refreshingly different from the "what do you do" conversations that dominated Boston networking events. We talked for nearly an hour whenever he had breaks between serving other guests. By the end of the night, I had his number. Our first date was at a hole-in-the-wall Vietnamese restaurant he knew. Our second was a walk through Boston Common. Our third was at a high school basketball game where he was helping coach. I found myself drawn to his passion for teaching, his dedication to his students, and the way he seemed completely content with his life despite not having the material trappings that many in my business circle considered essential. Jason never asked about my finances, even when I mentioned I ran my own company. He seemed to assume it was small, perhaps struggling like many startups, and I never corrected him. It wasn't that I was deliberately hiding my success. It just never seemed relevant to our conversations, which centered around ideas, experiences, and dreams rather than assets and achievements. 6 months into dating, Jason invited me to meet his family. They're having their annual summer barbecue next weekend, he said. It's a whole thing. My dad grills, my mom makes enough sides to feed an army. My brother brings the fancy beer he's always experimenting with at his brewery. He hesitated. I should warn you, though, they can be a bit intense. Intense how? I asked. Let's just say they have strong opinions about everything, and they're not shy about sharing them. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd come to recognize. My family comes from money, old money, the kind that makes people act entitled sometimes. They've never fully approved of my decision to teach instead of joining the family. Business. What's the family business? I asked, realizing I didn't know. Thompson Logistics. My great-grandfather started it, my grandfather expanded it, and now my dad runs it with my uncle. It's a regional shipping and warehousing company. He shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. My older brother works there too. He's being groomed to take over someday. I was supposed to join the executive track after college, but, well, I loved teaching too much. I froze. Thompson Logistics, one of the largest regional logistics operations in New England. Also, as of 3 months ago, a subsidiary of Chainlink Solutions, my company. We had acquired them in a quiet deal that hadn't made major headlines but had been transformative for both businesses. The Thompson family had retained operational control and kept their company name in the market, but ultimately, I was now effectively their boss, and Jason had no idea. The acquisition had been handled through layers of corporate entities and representatives, standard practice to maintain market stability during such transitions. I'd never actually met the Thompson family in person. Our legal teams had handled everything. The current CEO, who must be Jason's father, reported to our board, on which I held a controlling interest but operated largely through proxies to maintain my privacy. I should have told Jason right then and there, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he talked about his family's expectations, or maybe it was the fact that for the first time in my life, someone valued me for who I was rather than what I owned or could provide. Whatever the reason, I found myself saying, "I'm sure they're not that bad. I'd love to meet them." That decision, to withhold the truth about my connection to his family business, would set in motion events I could never have anticipated. The day of the barbecue arrived with perfect early summer weather. I dressed casually but neatly in jeans, and a simple blouse drove my 7-year-old Toyota to the address Jason had given me, and promptly felt my stomach drop. The family home was a sprawling colonial on 2 acres in one of Boston's most exclusive suburbs, complete with a circular driveway currently filled with luxury cars. Jason met me at the door with an apologetic smile. "I maybe understated things." "A bit," he said quietly. "Sorry." "It's fine," I assured him, even as I mentally recalibrated my expectations for the day. I'd grown up attending business functions with billionaire tech founders and venture capitalists. I could handle one family barbecue with people who had no idea I could buy and sell their family home several times over. He led me through the house, all hardwood floors, antique furniture, and oil paintings of stern-looking ancestors, to the back patio where about 20 people were gathered. A distinguished-looking man in his 60s was manning an elaborate grill setup, while a woman approximately the same age directed younger family members in setting up tables. "Mom, Dad," Jason called out, "I want you to meet Morgan Davis, Richard." And Eleanor Thompson turned to assess me with identical expressions of polite curiosity, tinged with something else. Wariness, perhaps. I'd seen that look before in business negotiations when someone is trying to determine if you're a threat or an opportunity. "So lovely to meet you," Eleanor said, air kissing near my cheeks. "Jason has told us almost nothing about you." "Mom," Jason sighed. "What?" "It's true." She turned back to me. "What was it he said, Richard?" "Just that you were really cool and ran some kind of business." She made air quotes around the phrases. "A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off." Richard Thompson extended his hand. His grip was firm, assessing. "And what business would that be, Ms. Davis?" "Tech," I said simply. "Software development for business applications." "Fascinating," he replied in a tone that suggested the opposite. "And is this a successful enterprise?" Before I could answer, a younger man who bore a striking resemblance to Jason approached, beer in hand. "Dad, stop interrogating Jason, sir. Date before she's even had a drink." He turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm Carter, the brother who actually works for a living. You must be Morgan. Brave of you to enter the lion's den. Morgan runs her own business." "Carter," Jason said, a hint of defensiveness in his voice. Carter's eyebrows rose. "Really? What kind?" "Software for business applications," I repeated. "Like apps? Phone games?" he asked. "Supply chain management solutions, actually," I replied. "Enterprise-level software that helps companies optimize their logistics operations." There was a beat of silence. Richard Thompson's spatula paused mid-flip. "Isn't that interesting?" Eleanor said, filling the awkward moment. "Our family has been in logistics for generations. I'm sure you and Richard will have lots to talk about." The conversation mercifully shifted as more family members came to introduce themselves, and I was temporarily spared further interrogation. Jason got me a drink and stayed close, occasionally squeezing my hand reassuringly. The afternoon progressed with the superficial pleasantness that masks underlying tension. I chatted with Jason's cousins, complimented Eleanor on the elaborate spread of food, and admired the property with appropriate appreciation. But I could feel Richard and Carter watching me, evaluating, measuring. It wasn't until we were seated for dinner that the thin veneer of politeness began to crack. I was placed between Jason and his cousin, directly across from Carter and his girlfriend Melissa, a willowy blonde who worked in art consulting and had already mentioned her family's summer home in the Hamptons 3 times. "So, Morgan," Carter said after a few minutes of general conversation, "Jason tells us you two met while he was bartending at some charity event?" "Yes, that's right," I confirmed. "And what brought you to a charity gala? Business networking?" The way he emphasized business made it clear what he thought of my enterprise. "One of my clients invited me," I said simply. "How nice," Melissa chimed in. "Was it your first gala?" The implication was clear. They assumed I was out of my element, in their world of wealth and privilege. If they only knew how many black tie fundraisers and investor dinners I'd attended, always as one of the most financially powerful people in the room despite my deliberate lack of flash. Morgan's company develops software for businesses like ours, actually, Jason said, a note of pride in his voice despite his limited understanding of what I actually did. "She's the CEO." Richard Thompson looked up from his plate. "CEO? Of how large an operation, may I ask?" "We're still growing," I said diplomatically. "How many employees?" he pressed. "Around 50 at our main office, with additional contract workers. Depending on project needs," Carter smirked. "So a startup. Impressive for someone so young, though the tech bubble makes it easier these days, doesn't it? Everyone with a coding boot camp certificate thinks they can disrupt established industries." "Carter," Jason warned. "What? I'm making conversation. I'm interested in Morgan's aspirations." He turned back to me. "The logistics industry is more complex than most outsiders realize. It takes generations of experience to truly understand. And companies like ours aren't easily disrupted by software alone." If he only knew that my startup had already disrupted his family's business enough to acquire it. "I'm sure you're right," I said instead, taking a sip of water. "Every industry has its complexities." Eleanor Thompson, perhaps sensing the tension, attempted to change the subject. "Jason mentioned you grew up in Oregon? Such a beautiful country. Were your parents in tech as well?" "No," I replied honestly. "My father was a mechanic, and my mother worked in healthcare." An almost imperceptible look passed between Richard and Eleanor. "How lovely that you've found such a different path," Eleanor said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It must make them very proud." The conversation drifted to other topics, but the undercurrent had been established. Every comment seemed designed to probe my background, my finances, my social standing, all while maintaining plausible deniability about their intentions. As dessert was being served, Richard Thompson cleared his throat. "So, Morgan, forgive my directness, but I'm curious. What exactly attracted you to my son?" "Dad," Jason protested. "Seriously?" "It's a fair question," Richard countered. "You've always been so focused on your teaching, hardly dating at all. And suddenly you're bringing someone home to meet the family, someone from a very different background than ours. Natural parental curiosity, that's all." Before Jason could object further, I placed a hand on his arm. "It's okay." I turned to Richard. I was attracted to Jason's passion for teaching, his kindness, and the fact that when we met, he asked me if I loved my work instead of how much money it made. That's surprisingly rare. Richard nodded slowly. "Yes, Jason has always been idealistic that way." As the evening wore on, the questions became less subtle. How did I afford to start my business? Was my apartment in a good neighborhood? Did I have student loans? Each query wrapped in a veneer of polite conversation, but designed to establish whether I was a suitable match for their son, or, as they clearly suspected, someone looking to benefit from the Thompson family's wealth and status. When Jason left the table to help bring out coffee, Carter leaned forward. Just so we're clear, the family business is staying in the family. Jason may not be interested in his inheritance, but that doesn't mean his partners automatically gain access. I stared at him, momentarily speechless at the baldness of the assumption. I assure you I have no interest in Jason's inheritance or your family business. Carter's girlfriend, Melissa, patted my hand condescendingly. Of course not, sweetie, but you have to understand, families like ours have to be careful. A young bachelor with Thompson as his last name tends to attract certain types. And what type do you think I am? I asked, my voice deceptively calm despite the anger building inside me. Before she could answer, Richard Thompson spoke up. What Melissa means is that we've seen Jason get hurt before by people who were more interested in his family connections than in him personally. With all due respect, Mr. Thompson, I said, you don't know anything about me or my intentions. That's precisely the point, isn't it? Eleanor joined in. We know so little about you, yet here you are at our family gathering. The return of Jason with a tray of coffee cups temporarily halted the conversation, but the damage was done. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of tense smiles and superficial chit-chat. When it was finally time to leave, I couldn't get to my car fast enough. I'm so sorry about that, Jason said as he walked me out. They were way out of line. Do they treat all your girlfriends this way? I asked. He looked away. I haven't brought many home, but yes, they tend to be protective. Protective? Jason, they practically accused me of being a gold digger to my face. He ran a hand through his hair, that nervous gesture again. They're just worried because of what happened with my ex. After we broke up, she tried to sue me, claiming I'd promised to support her financially. It was ugly, and ever since then, they've been extra suspicious. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I should have told him the truth, that, far from being after his family's money, I was technically his family's boss. That the company his father and brother were so proud of now ultimately answered to me. But looking at his distressed face, I couldn't do it. Not because I was being deceitful, but because I knew how it would affect him. Jason had carved out an identity separate from his family's wealth and business, learning that the woman he was dating was not only wealthy, but specifically owned. His family's company would upend everything. His sense of independence, the genuine connection we'd built. I understand family being protective, I said instead. But I'm not your ex, and I'm not after your money. I genuinely care about you. He kissed me then, a gentle apology. I know, and I care about you too. They'll come around once they get to know you better. As I drove home that night, I knew I was at a crossroads. I could tell Jason the truth and risk changing everything between us, or I could continue as we were and hope the truth never came to light. What I didn't realize was that events were already in motion that would make that decision for me. The weeks following the barbecue were complicated. Jason apologized repeatedly for his family's behavior, insisting they would warm up to me given time. Meanwhile, I wrestled with my own dilemma. How long could I reasonably keep my connection to Thompson Logistics a secret? I consulted Rachel, my COO, and the only person who knew every detail of both my personal and professional life. You realize this is basically a romantic comedy plot, right? She said, leaning back in her chair in my office. Except with corporate acquisitions instead of mistaken identity. It's not funny, Rachel. I'm in an impossible situation. Just tell him the truth, she suggested, as if it were that simple. If he's the guy you think he is, he'll understand why you didn't say anything right away. And if he's not? If he feels deceived or emasculated or whatever else men feel when they discover their girlfriend could buy and sell their family business? Rachel gave me a pointed look. Then he's not the right guy, and better you find out now than later. She was right, of course. But timing mattered, and the right moment never seemed to present itself. Jason and I settled into a comfortable routine. Weekend hikes, quiet dinners at neighborhood restaurants, movie nights at my deliberately modest apartment. We were building something real, something based on genuine connection rather than material concerns. I couldn't bring myself to risk it. Meanwhile, at work, Thomson Logistics was becoming a focal point of Chainlink's expansion strategy. We were integrating our software systems with their physical infrastructure, creating a hybrid model that could revolutionize regional shipping. The acquisition was proving even more valuable than we'd initially projected. Richard Thompson, as current CEO of the subsidiary, was sending weekly reports directly to our board, reports that ultimately landed on my desk. His insights were actually quite valuable. The man clearly knew his business. But there was increasing friction as we implemented changes to modernize their operations. In one particularly testy email exchange, conducted through proper corporate channels where he had no idea he was corresponding with me, Richard complained that these tech people with their algorithms don't understand the human element of logistics that Thomson has built over generations. The irony wasn't lost on me. About 2 months after the barbecue, Jason invited me to dinner at an upscale restaurant in Boston's financial district. It seemed oddly formal for us, but I agreed without questioning it. I arrived to find not just Jason, but Carter and his girlfriend Melissa already seated at the table. "Surprise," Jason said with an apologetic smile. Carter called just as I was, leaving and insisted on joining us. "I hope that's okay." "Of course," I lied, taking the empty seat beside Jason. Carter signaled the waiter immediately. "Let's get a bottle of champagne. The Krug, I think." "We don't need to," Jason began. "My treat," Carter insisted. "We're celebrating after all." "Celebrating what?" I asked. Carter exchanged a glance with Melissa, who smiled tightly. "Dad's about to announce a major expansion at Thomson Logistics. 3 new distribution centers across New England, upgraded technology infrastructure, the works. It's the biggest growth initiative in company history." I nearly choked on my water. This was news to me, and as the owner of the company, that was a problem. There had been preliminary discussions about potential expansion, but nothing had been approved by our board, certainly nothing on the scale Carter was describing. "That sounds significant," I managed. "It's going to transform the business," Carter continued, oblivious to my discomfort. "We're projecting a 30% increase in regional capacity. Dad's been working on the financing for months." The champagne arrived and Carter raised his glass. "To Thomson Logistics, past, present, and future." Jason lifted his glass half-heartedly. I could tell he felt caught between family loyalty and his own distance from the business. I sipped the champagne, mind racing. Richard Thompson was apparently planning a major expansion without proper approval from Chainlink's board. From me. Was this an innocent misunderstanding about corporate governance post-acquisition, or a deliberate attempt to assert autonomy? "Morgan," Melissa said sweetly, interrupting my thoughts. "Jason mentioned you develop supply chain software. You must be absolutely fascinated by all this." "It's definitely interesting," I said neutrally. "You should show Morgan what you've been working on," Jason suggested to his brother, clearly trying to include me. Carter hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "We're implementing a new routing system for our fleet. Proprietary technology," he emphasized, sliding the phone across the table. I glanced at the screen and had to suppress a laugh. The proprietary technology was actually an early prototype of Chainlink's core logistics software, one we'd already deemed obsolete and replaced with more advanced algorithms. "Impressive," I said, handing the phone back. "We've been approached, by several tech companies wanting to partner with us, Carter continued. But Dad believes in keeping development in-house. Can't trust these Silicon Valley types to understand real-world logistics. The irony was becoming almost unbearable. Speaking of trust, Carter continued, swirling his champagne, I hope there are no hard feelings about our conversation at the barbecue. Family businesses come with certain protective instincts. Carter, Jason warned. What? I'm extending an olive branch. He turned back to me. We just want to make sure Jason's happily settled with someone who appreciates him for who he is, not what he stands to inherit. I assure you, Carter, I have no interest in Jason's inheritance, I said, maintaining my composure. Of course not. Melissa interjected with a patronizing smile. But you have to admit, there's something serendipitous about a woman in financial technology, was it? Meeting the son of a successful business owner. Almost like a perfect business merger. Jason's face flushed with embarrassment. Can we please just have a normal dinner? Morgan and I have been dating for months now. This interrogation is ridiculous. Carter held up his hands in mock surrender. No interrogation. Just conversation. The rest of dinner proceeded with painful politeness, layered over obvious tension. Carter dominated the conversation with stories about Thompson Logistics' successes and their family's long history in the industry. Every anecdote seemed designed to emphasize the disparity between the Thompson legacy and my supposedly small startup. When the check came, I reached for my wallet, but Carter waved me off. Please, I invited myself to your date. It's the least I can do. I'm perfectly capable of paying my share, I insisted. I'm sure you are, he replied condescendingly. But we Thompsons have certain traditions about hospitality. On the drive home, Jason was uncharacteristically quiet. I'm sorry about tonight, he finally said. Carter had no right to ambush us. Like that. It's okay, I replied, though it wasn't. He's protective of you. I understand that. It's not protection, it's control. My whole family thinks that because I didn't join the company, I need to be managed. He sighed heavily. Sometimes I wonder if dating me is worth all this drama. It is, I assured him, reaching for his hand. Your family doesn't define you. Jason, he smiled faintly. That's what I love about you. You see me. Not my last name? That night, after dropping Jason off, I called an emergency meeting with my executive team for first thing the next morning. If Richard Thompson was planning a major expansion without proper approval, we needed to address it immediately. The meeting confirmed my concerns. Our CFO had received some preliminary inquiries about capital allocation for Thompson Logistics, but nothing approaching the scale Carter had described. Our integration team reported increasing resistance from Thompson's management to standard reporting protocols. It seems, Rachel observed, that the Thompsons aren't entirely comfortable with their new corporate overlords. Then we need to clarify the relationship, I decided. Schedule a formal meeting with Richard Thompson and his executive team. It's time they understand exactly how the chain of command works now. Rachel gave me a knowing look. And will you be attending this meeting personally? I hesitated. Until now, I'd managed Chainlink's acquisition of Thompson Logistics through proxies and representatives. Revealing myself as the owner would inevitably complicate my relationship with Jason. I'll have to, I finally said. This is too important to delegate. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning at Thompson Logistics headquarters in Boston. I arrived early, dressed in my rarely worn CEO armor, a tailored charcoal suit, subtle but expensive jewelry, and heels that put me at eye level with most men in the room. Rachel accompanied me, along with our CFO and legal counsel. We were shown to a conference room where Richard Thompson and his executive team, including Carter, were already seated. The surprise on their faces when I walked in was evident. Ms. Davis? Richard said, standing awkwardly. I'm afraid there's been some mistake. We're waiting for the Chainlink executive team. There's no mistake, Mr. Thompson, I replied calmly. I am Morgan Davis, founder and CEO of Chainlink Solutions, the parent company of Thompson Logistics. The silence that followed was deafening. Carter's face went from confusion to shock to anger in the span of seconds. This is impossible, he finally sputtered. You're Jason's girlfriend. You run some small tech startup. Chainlink Solutions acquired Thompson Logistics 6 months ago, I explained. We maintained the Thompson name and operational structure out of respect for your company's legacy and reputation in the industry. My team and I believed a gradual integration would be most beneficial for both organizations. Richard Thompson sank slowly back into his chair. I've been reporting to you? All this time? To my board, technically, but yes, ultimately to me. I took a seat at the head of the table, Rachel and my team flanking me. Now, I understand there are plans for a major expansion being developed. I'd like to discuss those in detail, as they haven't received proper approval through our corporate governance structure. What followed was one of the most uncomfortable business meetings of my career. Richard Thompson, to his credit, quickly shifted to professional mode, presenting the expansion plans comprehensively. They were actually quite sound, though the financing assumptions relied heavily on capital that would require Chainlink board approval. Carter, however, couldn't maintain his composure. Halfway through his father's presentation, he interrupted. This is absurd. We're sitting here presenting to... He gestured at me dismissively. When we should be discussing how this deception occurred in the first place. Carter, Richard warned. No, Dad. She deliberately misled us. She's been dating Jason while secretly controlling our family company. If that's not a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. Rachel shifted forward in her chair. Ms. Davis has maintained appropriate corporate governance throughout this process. All communications have gone through proper channels, with no preferential treatment for Thompson Logistics. Save it, Carter snapped. This whole thing stinks. First, she infiltrates our family through Jason, and now we discover she's actually our boss. You don't find that suspicious? I maintained my professional demeanor, though inside I was seething. Mr. Thompson, I met Jason by coincidence months after the acquisition was completed. I had no knowledge of his connection to your family until he invited me to the barbecue. At that point, I faced a personal dilemma about disclosure, but my private relationship has never affected my business decisions regarding Thompson Logistics. So you admit you deliberately withheld this information from Jason? Carter pressed. That's a personal matter between Jason and myself, I replied coldly. This meeting is about business operations, specifically the expansion proposal which, I'll remind you, requires board approval before proceeding. Richard Thompson cleared his throat. Perhaps we should table the expansion discussion for now. This new information requires some adjustment. He looked at me with a mixture of respect and wariness. I assume you'll be informing Jason of these circumstances? The question caught me off guard. In the rush to address the business issue, I hadn't fully considered how to handle the personal fallout. Yes, I said finally. I'll speak with him tonight. The remainder of the meeting was brief and tense. We established clear protocols for the expansion proposal review and scheduled follow-up discussions. As everyone filed out, Richard Thompson held back. Ms. Davis, he said when we were alone, I owe you an apology. My family's behavior at the barbecue was inexcusable, especially given the actual circumstances. Thank you for acknowledging that, I replied. However, he continued, I hope you understand that from a father's perspective, your failure to disclose your connection to our company while dating my son appears calculated. It wasn't calculated, Mr. Thompson. It was complicated. I didn't set out to deceive anyone. He nodded slowly. Jason has always chosen his own path, often contrary to family expectations. Finding out the woman he's dating secretly owns our company will be challenging for him. That was an understatement. As I left Thompson Logistics headquarters, I felt a growing knot of anxiety. I had hours to figure out how to tell Jason that. Not only was I wealthy enough to buy his family's company, but I had actually done so, and kept it from him for months. I spent the afternoon distracted, running through scenarios in my mind. Rachel tried to help, but ultimately this was my mess to clean up. "Just remember," she said before leaving my office, "you didn't do anything wrong. You built a successful company through hard work. You acquired Thompson Logistics because it was a sound business decision. And you fell for Jason because of who he is, not his last name. Those are all facts. They were facts, but facts without context can still feel like deception." I texted Jason and asked if we could meet for dinner at my apartment instead of going out as planned. He agreed, adding that he had something important to discuss as well. That sent my anxiety into overdrive. Had Carter already called him? Was he coming to confront me? I left work early and stopped at the grocery store, deciding to cook dinner myself rather than ordering in as we usually did. If this was going to be our last evening together, at least I could make it special. I'd just finished setting the table when my doorbell rang. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door to find Jason looking uncharacteristically nervous, a small gift bag in hand. "Hey," he said, leaning in to kiss me. "Something smells amazing." "I made chicken piccata," I replied. "Your favorite." He followed me to the kitchen, setting the gift bag on the counter. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "I wanted to." I poured him a glass of wine, stalling. "You mentioned you had something to discuss?" He took a sip of wine, then reached for the gift bag. "I was going to wait until after dinner, but maybe this should come first." He pushed it toward me. "Open it." With trembling fingers, I pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a key attached to a hand-carved wooden keychain in the shape of a house. "It's a key to my apartment," he explained. "I know we haven't talked about moving in together yet, but I wanted you to have it, to know you're welcome anytime." The gesture, so thoughtful and trusting, made what I had to do even harder. "Jason," I began, "there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago." He must have sensed the seriousness in my tone because his smile faded. "What is it? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but—" I took a deep breath. "It's about my company, Chainlink Solutions. It's not exactly a small startup. We're actually a significant player in the supply chain software industry, valued at over $200 million. Jason blinked. "Wow, that's impressive. But why would you keep that a secret?" "Because 6 months ago, Chainlink acquired a regional logistics company called Thompson Logistics. Your family's company." The color drained from his face. "What?" "I didn't know the connection when we met," I hurried to explain. "I had no idea you were related to the Thompsons until you invited me to the barbecue. By then, we were already involved, and I didn't know how to tell you without changing everything between us." Jason stood up abruptly, pacing my small kitchen. "Let me get this straight. You own my family's company? The business my great-grandfather built? And you've been, laughing behind my back while my family treated you like some gold-digging opportunist?" "No. It wasn't like that at all. I never laughed at you or your family. I liked that you saw me for me, not for my money or my company. Once I realized the connection, I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding calculating or manipulative." "Well, you failed," he said bitterly. "Because right now, calculating and manipulative is exactly how this feels." I felt a surge of defensiveness. "I didn't manipulate anything. I fell for you because you were kind and genuine. Because you valued your work teaching kids more than chasing status or money. Because you looked at me and saw Morgan, not a CEO or a bank account. And now I'm looking at you and seeing someone who's been lying to me for months." His voice rose in frustration. "Do you have any idea what position this puts me in? My family already thinks I'm naive, that I don't understand how people might use me to get the Thompson money. And now it turns out my girlfriend literally owns my family's business and never thought to mention it. I was going to tell you tonight, I said quietly. I had a meeting with your father and brother today about some expansion plans they were developing without proper approval. Carter realized who I was. I knew I had to tell you before someone else did. Jason laughed humorlessly. So you're only telling me because you got caught. That's great, Morgan. Really builds trust. The conversation was spiraling, just as I'd feared. Everything I said seemed to make things worse. I made a mistake, I admitted. I should have told you sooner. But I was afraid of losing what we had. Something real and uncomplicated by wealth or status. Uncomplicated? He repeated incredulously. You're my family's boss. How is that uncomplicated? Before I could respond, Jason's phone rang. He glanced at it, grimaced, and answered. Yes, Carter, I know. She's telling me right now. No, I don't need you to. I can handle this myself. He hung up, looking even more distressed. That was my brother. Apparently, he's concerned you're manipulating me as part of some larger corporate takeover strategy. That's ridiculous, I protested. The acquisition was completed long before I met you. Is it ridiculous? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like an awful lot of coincidences. He moved toward the door. I need some time to think about all this. Jason, please. I reached for his arm. At least stay for dinner. Let's talk this through. He pulled away. I can't right now. This is too much. And with that, he was gone, leaving me standing alone in my kitchen with a cooling dinner for two, and the devastating realization that my worst fears had come true. The truth had changed everything between us, possibly irreparably. The days following. Jason's abrupt departure from my apartment were some of the most emotionally conflicted of my life. Professionally, I needed to manage the Thompson logistics situation with clear boundaries and corporate governance. Personally, I was heartbroken and uncertain whether my relationship with Jason could be salvaged. He hadn't returned my calls or texts. 3 days of silence that spoke volumes. You need to separate the business from the relationship, Rachel advised during our morning strategy session. Richard and Carter Thompson are going to use this personal conflict to undermine your authority if you let them. I know, I agreed, rubbing my temples. The headache that had started the night Jason walked out hadn't subsided. The expansion proposal actually has merit. We should proceed with a modified version that aligns with our integration timeline. Are you sure you can be objective about this? I gave her a sharp look. I built this company from nothing, Rachel. I've never let personal feelings cloud my business judgment, and I'm not starting now. She nodded, satisfied. Good, because the Thompson executives are requesting another meeting. They've submitted a revised proposal that addresses most of our concerns about the expansion. Schedule it for next week. I want our financial team to thoroughly review the numbers first. As my assistant was confirming the meeting arrangements, my private line rang, a number I didn't recognize. Hoping it might be Jason calling from another phone, I answered immediately. Morgan Davis speaking. Ms. Davis, this is Eleanor Thompson. The clipped, formal tone of Jason's mother sent my heart sinking. I believe we need to talk. I straightened in my chair. Mrs. Thompson, this is unexpected. Yes, well, recent revelations have made many things unexpected. Her voice had the practiced calm of someone containing significant emotion. I was wondering if you might be available for tea this afternoon. There are matters we should discuss privately. Every instinct warned me this was a bad idea, but curiosity won out. I could meet at 3 o'clock. Excellent. There's a tea room at the Westford Hotel. I've taken the liberty of reserving a private seating area. Of course she had. The Westford was one of Boston's old money establishments, the kind of place where the Thompson family would be known by name. Eleanor was choosing battlefield terrain that favored her. I'll see you at 3. I confirmed, ending the call. Rachel, who had overheard my end of the conversation, raised an eyebrow. Tea with the potential mother-in-law? Brave. Or foolish, I admitted. But I need to understand what I'm dealing with. How deep does this family's influence go with Jason? Is there any chance of salvaging things? Or has Carter poisoned the well completely? Just remember who you are, Rachel said. You're Morgan Davis, the woman who built a $200 million company from scratch, not some intimidated girlfriend meeting her boyfriend's mother. I arrived at the Westford Hotel precisely at 3, dressed in a simple but expensive sheath dress, professional enough for business, appropriate for afternoon tea. The maitre d' immediately recognized Eleanor's name and led me to a secluded alcove where she was already seated, a silver tea service gleaming on the table between 2 ornate chairs. "Ms. Davis," she said, not rising. "Thank you for coming." "Mrs. Thompson." I took the seat across from her, noting the slight tightening of her lips when I didn't wait to be invited to sit. "You wanted to speak with me." She poured tea with practiced precision. "I'll be direct. The situation between you, Jason, and our family business has created considerable distress for everyone involved. I understand that, and I regret the misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" She set down her teacup with a barely perceptible clink. "Is that what you call deliberately concealing your ownership of our family company while dating our son?" I accepted the cup she offered. "I didn't plan any of this, Mrs. Thompson. I met Jason by chance. When I discovered his connection to Thompson Logistics, I faced a difficult choice about disclosure. Perhaps I made the wrong decision, but my intentions were personal, not professional." "Intentions," she echoed, studying me. "Richard and I have spent 40 years protecting our family and its legacy. When you reach our age, Ms. Davis, you learn to recognize patterns, to identify threats before they fully materialize. I'm not a threat to your family." "No?" She raised an eyebrow. "You control our company, you've been intimate with our son, and you maintain deliberate secrecy about both connections." The accusation stung. Put that way, my actions did sound calculating. "Mrs. Thompson, I genuinely care for Jason. My feelings for him have nothing to do with business interests." "Perhaps you believe that." Her tone suggested she didn't. "But surely you can understand our perspective. Jason has always been idealistic, unwilling to acknowledge how the world truly works. It makes him vulnerable to those who might take advantage." My patience thinned. "With all due respect, Jason is a grown man capable of making his own decisions. Your family's constant insinuations about my character or intentions are exactly what pushed me to keep my business position private. From the moment we met, you and your husband decided I was a gold digger based on nothing but preconceptions." Eleanor's expression remained placid, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "And now we discover you're actually wealthy enough to buy our company. You'll forgive us if the irony seems suspicious rather than amusing." "What exactly do you want from me, Mrs. Thompson? I came here hoping for a productive conversation." She set down her teacup. "I want you to consider Jason's position in all this. Our son values authenticity and honesty above all else. Finding out the woman he was falling for has been hiding such a significant truth has devastated him. The past tense, was falling for, wasn't lost on me." "Have you spoken with him?" "He spent 2 nights at our home after leaving your apartment. He's confused, hurt, and questioning everything about your relationship." She leaned forward slightly. "If you truly care for him as you claim, you need to consider whether continuing this relationship is in his best interest." The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. Almost. "With all due respect, Mrs. Thompson, that's for Jason and me to determine, not you." "Perhaps, but consider the practical reality. Every family dinner, every holiday, every significant moment would be shadowed by this corporate entanglement. You, as his partner, would also be the person ultimately responsible for his father's and brother's livelihoods. The person who could, with a business decision, alter the legacy his ancestors built. She shook her head. It's an untenable situation. I wanted to argue, but some of what she said resonated with my own fears. The business relationship did complicate everything, but that didn't mean it made a personal relationship impossible. I appreciate your concern, I said finally, but I believe Jason and I deserve the chance to work through this ourselves. Eleanor studied me for a long moment, then nodded slightly. I expected you'd say that. You strike me as a woman accustomed to getting what she wants. She reached into her purse and withdrew a business card, sliding it across the table. This is the contact information for Sherman Wallace, Chainlink's largest competitor. I stared at the card, confused. Why are you giving me this? Sherman has been trying to acquire software capabilities like Chainlink's for years. I spoke with him this morning. He's prepared to make you a very generous offer for your company, significantly above market value. The pieces clicked into place. You want me to sell my company to remove the conflict of interest? She smiled thinly. It would resolve many complications. You'd walk away with a substantial fortune, and the Thompson family could reacquire controlling interest in our company. A clean break, professionally and personally. I was momentarily speechless at the audacity. This woman was suggesting I sell the company I'd built from nothing, my life's work, to make her family comfortable. Mrs. Thompson, I said when I found my voice, Chainlink isn't just a business asset I can trade away. It represents years of my life, the livelihoods of over 50 employees, and a vision I believe in. I didn't build it to sell it off at the first sign of personal complications. Everyone has a price, Ms. Davis. Not for this. I stood, placing my napkin beside my barely touched tea. Thank you for the invitation, but I think we're done here. Eleanor remained seated, unruffled. Consider the offer, please. For everyone's sake, Jason included. As I walked out of the hotel, my phone buzzed with a text. Jason, finally. Can we talk? Tonight? My place, 7 p.m. I typed back immediately. I'll be there. The rest of the afternoon crawled by as I tried to focus on work without success. By 6, I gave up the pretense and left the office, taking a circuitous route to Jason's apartment to clear my head. What would I say to him? How could I explain my choices without sounding manipulative or defensive? And how would we navigate the complex reality of our situation if we did try to move forward together? Jason lived in a modest 2-bedroom in Cambridge, far below what his family connections could have afforded him. It was one of the things I'd admired about him from the start, his determination to live on his teacher's salary rather than family money. He opened the door at my knock, looking tired but composed. The anger from our last encounter had faded, replaced by something more complex. Thanks for coming, he said, stepping back to let me in. Thanks for texting. I was worried when I didn't hear from you. He led me to the living room, where 2 glasses and a bottle of wine waited on the coffee table. I needed time to think, to process everything. I understand. I took the seat he offered, maintaining a careful distance. I met with your mother today. Surprise flickered across his face. You did? She didn't mention calling you. She invited me for tea at Westford to discuss the situation. He groaned. I'm sorry. My family's inability to stay out of my personal life is exhausting. He poured wine for both of us. What did she want? I hesitated, then decided complete honesty was the only viable path forward. She suggested I sell Chainlink to your family's biggest competitor, so that the Thompsons could regain control of their company. Apparently, that would resolve the complications in our relationship. Jason nearly choked on his wine. She what? That's... God, I'm so sorry, Morgan. That's completely out of line. His immediate indignation on my behalf loosened something tight in my chest. It's okay. I declined, firmly. It's not okay. It's interfering and presumptuous and… He set down his glass. This is exactly why I keep my distance from family business matters. They think everything and everyone has a price. Jason, I said softly, we need to talk about ourselves. About whether there still is an us after everything that's happened. He ran a hand through his hair, that nervous gesture I'd come to recognize. I'm still processing the fact that my girlfriend secretly owns my family's company. It's a lot to wrap my head around. I know. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I kept waiting for the right moment. And then the longer I waited, the harder it became to bring up. Why did you keep it secret in the first place? Did you think I'd care? That you're successful? That I'd be intimidated by your wealth? I considered my answer carefully. Maybe, partly, but mostly, I was enjoying being with someone who saw me as just Morgan, not as a CEO or a potential investor or a networking opportunity. With you, I could just be myself. But keeping something that big from me, it feels like that wasn't your real self either. You're right. I met his gaze directly. I compartmentalized. I kept my business life and personal life separate, telling myself it was simpler that way. But I was wrong. I should have trusted you with the whole truth. He was quiet for a moment, turning his wine glass slowly between his fingers. When did you find out about the connection between your company and my family? The night you first mentioned Thompson Logistics. When you invited me to the barbecue. And the acquisition? When did that happen? About 3 months before we met. He nodded slowly, processing this timeline. So you really didn't know who I was when we started dating? No. It was pure coincidence. I leaned forward, needing him to understand this critical point. Jason, I never approached you with any ulterior motive. Meeting you, falling for you, that had nothing to do with business. He studied my face for a long moment. I believe you. Relief washed through me. You do? Yeah. If you'd been trying to manipulate me or my family, you would have played things very differently. A small smile touched his lips. Plus, you're right. I've seen how you live. If you were trying to impress me with wealth or status, you did a terrible job of it. I laughed despite myself. My apartment furniture is mostly secondhand. Your car is at least 7 years old. 8, actually. The tension between us eased slightly. Jason refilled our glasses. So what now? I still have questions, but I'm not angry anymore. Just trying to figure out where we go from here. That depends, I said carefully. Your mother made some fair points about the complications. As long as Chainlink owns Thompson Logistics, there's an inherent conflict of interest in our relationship. I'd be your father's and brother's boss, essentially. True. But people navigate complicated professional-personal boundaries all the time. He paused. Unless… Are you considering your mother's suggestion? Selling your company? No, I said firmly. Chainlink is more than just a business to me. It's my life's work, my vision. I can't give that up. He nodded, looking relieved. Good. I wouldn't want you to sacrifice that for us. The hesitation before us hung in the air between us. We could establish clear boundaries, I suggested. I could recuse myself from decisions directly affecting Thompson Logistics, delegate oversight to other executives. Would that work? From a business perspective? It's not ideal, but it's doable. The real question is whether we can separate our personal relationship from the business reality. I took a deep breath. Jason, your family already thought I was with you for financial gain when they believed I had nothing. Now that they know the truth, they're even more suspicious of my motives. Every holiday, every family gathering would be overshadowed by that dynamic. He grimaced. Let me worry about my family. They'll either accept us or they won't. But I'm done letting them dictate my life choices. Are you sure? Family relationships are complicated and— Morgan, he interrupted gently. I teach high school history. I see every day how powerful family narratives can be, how they shape people's perceptions and choices. But I also believe we can recognize those narratives without being controlled by them. He reached across the space between us, taking my hand. I care about you, the real you, not the CEO, not the girlfriend, but the whole complex person. If you feel the same way, I think we owe it to ourselves to try making this work. His words resonated deep within me. Wasn't that exactly what I'd wanted all along? To be seen and accepted as my complete self? I do care about you, I said, squeezing his hand. But I need you to understand something. My company is part of who I am. I won't apologize for my success or hide it anymore. If we move forward together, it has to be with complete transparency, even when it's uncomfortable. I wouldn't want it any other way. He shifted closer. Though I'll admit, it's going to take some getting used to, dating a corporate powerhouse. I'm still just Morgan, the same person who orders takeout too often and falls asleep watching documentaries, who also happens to own my family's company. There is that small detail, I admitted. He laughed, then grew serious again. My parents and Carter are going to make this difficult. I know. Are you prepared for that? Are you? They can be pretty relentless when they feel threatened. I thought about Eleanor's attempt to manipulate me into selling Chainlink. I've faced tougher opponents in business. No offense to your family. None taken. He hesitated. There's something else we should discuss. The expansion plans my father and brother were developing. The ones they didn't properly clear with Chainlink's board? He nodded. That's going to be a flashpoint. Dad and Carter have been working on that strategy for months. They see it as the next chapter in the Thompson legacy. The plans actually have merit, I admitted. With some modifications to align with Chainlink's broader integration strategy, we could proceed, but they need to work within our corporate structure, not around it. Could you explain that to them? Maybe if they understood you're not trying to dismantle or diminish what they've built. I considered this. I could try. A joint strategy session might help, something collaborative rather than directive. I think that would make a difference. They're proud, but they're also business people. If you approach them as respected partners rather than subordinates, they might come around. And us? What do we tell them about our relationship? Jason smiled, a determined glint in his eye. The truth. That we're figuring things out, just like they're figuring out this new corporate reality. And that their support would be appreciated, but isn't required. His confidence bolstered my own. Maybe we could navigate this complex situation after all. The personal and professional tangled together in ways neither of us had anticipated. So, I said, we're going to try this? Us? Instead of answering with words, Jason closed the distance between us, his kiss conveying everything words couldn't. When we finally separated, his expression was resolute. We're going to do more than try, he said. We're going to make it work. I wanted to believe him. But as I left his apartment later that night, my mind kept returning to Eleanor Thompson's warning. The corporate entanglement, the family dynamics, the lingering suspicions. These weren't obstacles we could simply wish away with determination and goodwill. The real test would come when business and personal interests inevitably collided. And knowing the Thompsons, that collision wasn't far away. The next morning, I arrived at the Chainlink offices earlier than usual. If Jason and I were going to make our relationship work, I needed to establish clear professional boundaries regarding Thompson Logistics. Rachel found me reviewing the company's organizational structure. You're here early? Good news with the teacher? We're working things out, I said, not looking up from my screen. Which means I need to restructure our oversight of Thompson Logistics. I can't be directly involved in day-to-day decisions anymore. pulled up a chair. That's going to be complicated. The acquisition is still in early integration phases. I know. But if there's even a perception that my personal relationship is influencing business decisions, it could create liability issues. I turned the screen toward her. I'm thinking we create a special oversight committee within the board. You'll lead it, with Evan from legal and Priya from operations. Rachel studied the diagram. It could work. The committee makes recommendations. To the full board, you recuse yourself from Thompson's specific votes. She looked up. But you're still the majority shareholder. That fact doesn't change. True. But this creates a buffer. Ensures decisions are being made on business merit rather than personal feelings. I sighed. It's not perfect, but it's the best solution I can come up with. Have you talked to Richard Thompson about this? Or Carter? Not yet. I wanted to solidify our approach first. I'm scheduling a meeting for tomorrow. Rachel hesitated. And Jason? Is he going to be involved in these discussions? No. That's another boundary we need to maintain. Jason stays completely separate from any business matters involving Chainlink and Thompson Logistics. Good luck with that, Rachel muttered. Family businesses have a way of bleeding into every aspect of life. She wasn't wrong, but I was determined to make this work, both professionally and personally. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and strategy sessions. I'd just wrapped up a call with our development team when my assistant announced a visitor. Mr. Carter Thompson is here. He doesn't have an appointment, but he insists it's urgent. I suppressed a groan. Send him in. Carter strode into my office with the confident swagger of someone accustomed to commanding attention. His expression was neutral, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed his discomfort at being in my space, on my terms. Ms. Davis, he said, stiffly. Thank you for seeing me. Of course. What can I do for you, Carter? He remained standing despite my gesture toward a chair. I wanted to speak with you directly, without the corporate formalities, about my brother. I kept my expression, carefully professional. I appreciate your concern, but my relationship with Jason is between him and me. Is it? Carter challenged. When you're secretly the owner of our family company? When every conversation at Sunday dinner could potentially include proprietary business information? I understand your concerns. In fact, I've been working on establishing clear boundaries between my personal relationship with Jason and my professional connection to Thompson Logistics. That caught him off guard. What kind of boundaries? I explained the oversight committee structure, the recusal process, the information firewalls we would establish. As I spoke, Carter's expression shifted from skepticism to grudging consideration. That's more thorough than I expected, he finally admitted. I take both my business responsibilities and my personal relationships seriously, Carter. I have no interest in creating conflicts of interest or compromising Thompson Logistics operations. He finally took a seat. Let's be blunt, Ms. Davis. My family has spent 3 generations building Thompson Logistics. It's more than just a business to us. It's our legacy. When Chainlink acquired us, we were assured that the Thompson name and operational independence would be maintained. And they have been, I pointed out. Your father still runs day-to-day operations. The Thompson brand remains intact. For now. Carter leaned forward. But we both know acquisitions often lead to absorption. Piece by piece, the acquired company loses its identity, its autonomy. Add in your relationship with Jason, and you can understand why my family is concerned. About the future. I considered my response carefully. The acquisition was a business decision, Carter. My relationship with Jason was entirely separate and subsequent. I have no intention of using one to influence the other. Intentions change, he replied. Priorities shift. Not mine. I matched his direct gaze. Thompson Logistics was acquired because it provides valuable infrastructure to complement Chainlink's software solutions. The value proposition depends on maintaining your company's operational expertise and market reputation. Dismantling what makes Thompson effective would be counterproductive. Carter studied me, clearly trying to assess my sincerity. My mother mentioned she spoke with you yesterday. She did. She also mentioned a potential solution to our complicated situation. I kept my expression neutral. If you're referring to her suggestion that I sell Chainlink to Sherman Wallace, I've already declined. That's not on the table. He nodded, unsurprised. I told her you wouldn't go for it. Anyone who builds a company from scratch doesn't let it go easily. A hint of respect flickered in his eyes. Dad did some research on you after the meeting. Your background. How you built Chainlink from nothing. It's impressive. The grudging compliment surprised me. Thank you. Don't misunderstand. I still think your relationship with Jason creates an impossible conflict, but I respect what you've built professionally. He stood. The oversight committee is a start. We'll see if it's enough. After Carter left, I sat in silence, processing the interaction. It wasn't exactly an olive branch, but it wasn't open hostility either. Progress, however small. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. Dinner tonight? My place again? I smiled, typing back. I'll bring dessert. 7 p.m.? His response came quickly. Perfect. And FYI, Carter texted that he stopped by your office. Hope he behaves himself. That caught me off guard. I hadn't expected Carter to tell Jason about our meeting. Perhaps the Thompson brothers were closer than I'd realized. He was surprisingly civil, I replied. We can talk about it tonight. When I arrived at Jason's apartment that evening, the aroma of something delicious greeted me at the door. Jason stood in the small kitchen, stirring something on the stove, soft music playing in the background. Hey, he said, looking up with a smile. Hope you like risotto. Love it. I held up a bag from a local bakery. Chocolate mousse cake for dessert. He kissed me hello, lingering a moment longer than usual. So, my brother made an unannounced visit to your office today. He did? Surprisingly, it was almost productive. Jason raised an eyebrow. Carter, productive? Those words don't usually go together. I explained about the oversight committee and Carter's reaction as Jason continued cooking. When I finished, he seemed thoughtful. It's a good solution, he said finally. But are you okay with stepping back from Thompson Logistics oversight? It's your company, after all. It's necessary, I replied. And honestly, it's good corporate governance anyway. Too much centralized control isn't healthy for any organization. He served the risotto, and we moved to his small dining table. Carter mentioned Mom tried to get you to sell Chainlink to Sherman Wallace, of all people. I nodded. Your mother is nothing if not strategic. Jason shook his head in disbelief. Wallace has been trying to poach Dad's best managers for years. The idea that she'd want to hand Thompson Logistics to him is outrageous. I think she was more focused on removing me from the equation than on the business implications. Probably, he admitted. My family tends to prioritize control over everything else. He paused, setting down his fork. Speaking of family, there's something we need to discuss. Sunday dinner. I groaned inwardly. Let me guess. Your parents' weekly family gathering? Yeah, I skipped last week because of everything. But if we're really doing this, us, I mean, then eventually you'll need to face them again. All of them. Together. The thought was intimidating, even for someone who regularly negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts. Are you sure that's a good idea right now? Things are still tense. They're always going to be tense until we normalize the situation. He reached for my hand across the table. I'm not saying it has to be this Sunday, but soon. And I'll be right there with you this time. No silence, no letting them say whatever they want without defending you. His determination was touching, but I had my doubts. Jason, I appreciate that. But your family's issues with me go beyond simple disapproval now. From their perspective, I'm both the woman who tricked their son and the corporate entity that controls their livelihood. You didn't trick me, he said firmly. And as for controlling their livelihood, they sold the company. That was their choice, made long before you and I met. Facts and feelings are different things. Your family feels threatened on multiple fronts, he sighed. I know, but avoiding them won't solve anything. Trust me, I've been avoiding difficult conversations with my family for years. It doesn't work. He squeezed my hand. Besides, I'm kind of proud to be dating the brilliant CEO who outmaneuvered my father and brother in business. I'd like to show that off a little. That made me laugh. Now who's got ulterior motives? Dinner shifted to lighter topics after that, but the Sunday dinner question lingered in my mind. Jason was right. We couldn't avoid his family forever. But the prospect of facing the entire Thompson clan across a dining table, knowing everything they now knew about me, was daunting. The next morning, I met with Rachel and the legal team to formalize the oversight committee structure. By afternoon, the framework was in place, ready to present to Richard Thompson and his executive team. You've thought this through thoroughly, our chief counsel remarked, reviewing the documentation. Though I'm curious, why create this elaborate structure rather than simply selling Thompson Logistics to another buyer? It would resolve the conflict cleanly. Thompson Logistics is integral to our vertical integration strategy, I replied, avoiding any mention of personal considerations. The acquisition makes sense for Chainlink, and I won't compromise business objectives because of personal complications. He nodded, satisfied with the explanation. But Rachel gave me a knowing look as we left the meeting. It's not just business, is it? She asked quietly as we walked back to my office. It's mostly business, I insisted. But no, not entirely. I care about Jason. I won't hurt him by dismantling his family's legacy just because it's complicated. That's called conflict of interest, Morgan. That's why we're creating the oversight committee. She shook her head but didn't press further. We both knew the situation was more complex than any corporate structure could fully address. The meeting with Richard Thompson and his executive team was scheduled for 3 p.m. I arrived early, wanting to establish a sense of control over the proceedings. To my surprise, Richard was already there, reviewing documents alone in the conference room. He looked up as I entered. Ms. Davis, thank you for arranging this. Of course, I'm glad we could find a time that worked for everyone. An awkward silence fell between us, broken only when Richard cleared his throat. My wife mentioned she met with you. She did. Her approach was heavy-handed. I want to apologize for that. The unexpected contrition caught me off guard. Thank you. He gestured to the documents before him. I've been reviewing Thompson Logistics' performance since the acquisition. Despite my initial concerns, the integration has been largely beneficial. Your software solutions have already improved our efficiency metrics by nearly 12%. I'm glad to hear that. He studied me with a calculating gaze. Carter tells me you're establishing an oversight committee to create separation between your personal and professional connections to our family. Yes, it seemed the most prudent approach. It's unnecessary. He slid the documents aside. But I appreciate the gesture and the thought behind it. Before I could respond, the door opened as Carter and the rest of the Thompson executive team filed in, followed by Rachel and our legal counsel. The moment for private conversation had passed. The meeting proceeded professionally, if somewhat stiffly. I presented the oversight committee structure, explaining the rationale and implementation timeline. Richard asked pertinent questions, Carter watched with guarded interest, and by the end, we had agreement on the path forward. As everyone gathered their materials to leave, Richard asked me to stay behind. Carter hesitated at the door, clearly curious, but his father waved him on. When we were alone, Richard's professional facade softened slightly. My son cares for you. Jason? Yes. Jason. A hint of humor touched his eyes. Carter's feelings toward you are more complicated at present. I care for Jason too. Richard nodded slowly. I believe you do. And contrary to what you might think, that matters to me. Jason's happiness has always been important, even when I disagreed with his choices. Like becoming a teacher instead of joining the family business? Precisely. He sighed. My wife and I handled that poorly. We've handled many things poorly when it comes to Jason, including your relationship. He paused. Eleanor told me about her suggestion that you sell your company. It was inappropriate. It was, I agreed, not softening the truth. Thompson Logistics has been the center of our family for 3 generations. When you acquired it, we felt diminished, even with the operational autonomy your terms provided. Learning that the same woman was dating our son felt like too much coincidence to accept. I understand that, but it was a coincidence. Perhaps. He gathered his briefcase. Jason tells me you'll be joining us for Sunday dinner next week. My surprise must have shown on my face because Richard's expression turned knowing. He hasn't asked you yet? That's interesting. He moved toward the door. For what it's worth, Ms. Davis, I hope you'll accept when he does. The situation between our families, personal and professional, won't improve through avoidance. After he left, I sat alone in the conference room, processing the conversation. Richard Thompson was clearly more pragmatic than his wife or son, more willing to adapt to changing circumstances rather than fight futilely against them. That evening, Jason called instead of texting. Hey, I answered, smiling despite myself. How was your day? Chaotic. The sophomore class decided today was the perfect day to reenact the French Revolution in the cafeteria, complete with guillotine made from cafeteria trays. I laughed. Sounds educational, at least. That's what I told the principal. His tone shifted. So I had an interesting call from my father this afternoon. Did you? I kept my voice neutral. He mentioned you two had a good meeting about the oversight committee, and that he apologized for my mother's behavior? He did. That's unprecedented. Jason sounded genuinely shocked. Dad doesn't apologize, ever. Maybe he's evolving, or calculating, Jason countered. Dad's always playing 3 moves ahead. If he's being conciliatory, he has a reason. That aligned with my impression of Richard Thompson as well. What do you think his reason might be? I'm not sure yet. He paused. He also mentioned Sunday dinner, that I should bring you. And there it was, the invitation Richard had alluded to. Are you asking me to Sunday dinner with your family? But with caveats. 1, we arrive together and leave together. 2, at the first sign of inappropriate comments from anyone, we walk out. 3, no business talk whatsoever. His protective instincts were endearing, if somewhat unnecessary. I'd faced far more intimidating situations in business than a family dinner. Okay, I agreed. Sunday dinner it is. Really? Just like that? He sounded surprised. I had an entire persuasive speech prepared. Save it for when I need convincing. About something else. I hesitated. Jason, your father seemed different today. More accepting. That's what worries me, he admitted. Dad doesn't change his mind easily. If he's being accommodating now, it's because he's planning something. Like what? I don't know, but my family operates on control and calculation. Always has. His voice softened. Unlike you. That's what I love about you, Morgan. You're straightforward. What you see is what you get. The irony of that statement, given how long I'd concealed my connection to his family's company, wasn't lost on me. But I understood what he meant. Despite my initial deception, my core values were transparent. Sunday will be fine, I assured him. Whatever your family has planned, we'll handle it together. Together, he echoed. I liked the sound of that. As we said goodnight, I found myself both anticipating and dreading the upcoming family dinner. The professional boundaries were now in place with the oversight committee, but the personal boundaries, the complex emotional terrain of family relationships, those would be far more challenging to navigate, and Richard Thompson's uncharacteristic conciliation suggested he had indeed shifted tactics rather than perspectives. The question was, what new strategy was he pursuing, and how would it affect Jason and me? Sunday would likely provide answers, whether I wanted them or not. The days leading up to Sunday dinner passed in a whirlwind of work and preparation. The oversight committee was formally established, with Rachel leading the first meeting on Friday to review Thompson Logistics' operational reports. I deliberately stayed away, reinforcing the separation between my personal and professional connections to the Thompson family. By Sunday morning, I was surprisingly nervous, more so than before major investor presentations or board meetings. My closet, usually a testament to practical minimalism, suddenly seemed inadequate. What does one wear to dinner with a family who once accused you of being a gold digger, but now knows you're the owner of their company? After trying on and discarding several outfits, I settled on a simple navy dress that projected confidence without ostentation. Professional enough to command respect, but not so formal as to create distance. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Ready for the Thompson family gauntlet? I'll pick you up at 4. I smiled despite my nerves. Ready as I'll ever be. See you. At 4. He arrived precisely on time, looking handsome in dark jeans and a light blue button-down that brought out his eyes. His smile faltered slightly when he saw me. "What's wrong?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing," he assured me quickly. "You just look different." I glanced down at my outfit. Bad difference? No, not at all. Just more, he searched for the word, formal than usual. More like CEO Morgan than Weekend Morgan. The observation struck home. I had unconsciously adopted my professional armor for this personal encounter. Should I change? He considered this, then shook his head. No. If it makes you feel confident, wear it. God knows we'll need all the confidence we can get. He took my hand. Ready? The drive to his parents' house was filled with Jason's running commentary on Thompson family dynamics. Which topics to avoid? Politics, Jason's career choices, Carter's recent breakup with Melissa. Which relatives might be allies? His cousin. Diane, his Uncle Philip, who'd always been the family maverick. And which dishes to compliment? Eleanor's roast was her pride and joy, but never mentioned the soggy Yorkshire puddings. You're making it sound like a diplomatic mission to a hostile foreign power, I observed. That's not entirely inaccurate, he replied with a grim smile. Thompson's Sunday dinners have their own unique intensity. As we pulled into the circular driveway of the Thompson estate, I noticed more cars than I'd expected. Full house today, Jason remarked, frowning slightly. Mom must have called in the extended family. Is that normal? For major holidays, yes. For a regular Sunday? No. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. They're making a statement. My stomach tightened. What kind of statement? That this is a family matter. That they're presenting a united front. He parked the car but made no move to get out. I'm sorry, Morgan. This is already starting off more complicated than I'd hoped. I placed a hand on his arm. Jason, I negotiate complex business deals for a living. I can handle one family dinner, no matter how many relatives your mother has rallied. He covered my hand with his. I know you can. That's one of the things I admire about you. He leaned over, kissing me softly. Let's go face the Thompson Inquisition. Eleanor Thompson opened the door before we could ring the bell, her practiced smile firmly in place. She wore an elegant cream blouse and tailored slacks, pearl earrings gleaming against her perfectly coiffed silver hair. Jason, darling. She air-kissed both his cheeks before turning to me with considerably less warmth. Ms. Davis, thank you for joining us. Morgan, please, I corrected gently. And thank you for having me, Mrs. Thompson. Eleanor, she replied, the concession clearly reluctant. Everyone's gathered in the living room for pre-dinner drinks. She led us through the foyer into a spacious living room where about 15 people were engaged in animated conversation. The room quieted noticeably as we entered, all eyes turning toward us with varying degrees of curiosity and wariness. Richard Thompson detached himself from a group by the fireplace, moving to greet us with the same smooth confidence I'd observed in our business meetings. Jason, he said warmly, clapping his son on the shoulder before turning to me. Morgan, welcome to our home, properly this time, without the misunderstandings of our previous encounter. The public acknowledgement, delivered within earshot of the entire family, was clearly deliberate. Richard was setting the tone, demonstrating his acceptance of the new dynamic. I'd seen similar tactics in corporate mergers, the public handshake that signals to all stakeholders that leadership is aligned, regardless of private reservations. Thank you, Richard, I replied, matching his tone. I appreciate the welcome. Jason squeezed my hand supportively as Richard began making introductions around the room. There were aunts and uncles, cousins of various ages, and Carter, who nodded stiffly from his position by the bar. The names blurred together, but I noted the varied reactions, some openly curious, others politely reserved, a few barely concealing their disapproval. And this is my brother Philip, Richard concluded, gesturing to a man who looked like a less polished version of himself. Same strong features, but with an approachability Richard lacked. The family entrepreneur. Philip Thompson grinned, offering a firm handshake. Black sheep is the term they usually use, but entrepreneur sounds much better. He studied me with genuine interest. So you're the tech whiz who bought out my brother's company and then stole his son's heart. Impressive multitasking. Philip, Eleanor admonished, but I could see Jason suppressing a smile. It wasn't quite that coordinated, I admitted. The heart stealing was entirely coincidental. Philip laughed. I like her, Jason. Much better than that socialite you brought to Christmas 3 years ago. What was her name? The one who kept asking if our silver was real. Vanessa, Jason supplied, relaxing slightly. And yes, Morgan is definitely an upgrade. A young woman approached, bearing a striking resemblance to Carter but with a warmth he lacked. I'm Diane, Carter's sister, she introduced herself. The invisible middle child. Hardly invisible, Jason corrected, hugging her affectionately. Just the only sensible Thompson of our generation. Diane rolled her eyes good-naturedly. Low bar, but I'll take it. She turned to me. Don't let the family intimidate you. Half of them are just here for the free food and family gossip. With Diane and Philip's friendly overtures, the atmosphere lightened somewhat. Jason guided me to the bar, where Carter was now alone, nursing a tumbler of what looked like scotch. Carter, Jason acknowledged cautiously. Brother? Carter's gaze shifted to me. Ms. Davis. Morgan, I corrected. We're not in a board meeting, Carter. He studied me for a moment, then nodded slightly. Morgan. He gestured to the bar. Drink? White wine, please. As he poured, I noticed his hands were steady, his movements precise. Carter Thompson might dislike the situation, but he was maintaining composure. Quite the turnout today, Jason commented, accepting a beer. Mom really rallied the troops. Carter handed me my wine. Her idea of a united front, though I'm not sure what exactly we're uniting against at this point. He glanced at me. The corporate takeover is done. The personal situation is evolving. His neutral characterization of our relationship surprised me. That's an interesting way to put it. How would you describe it? He challenged, but without the hostility I'd come to expect. I considered my answer carefully, aware that this exchange might set the tone for future interactions. I'd say we're all adapting to circumstances none of us anticipated. Finding our way forward with the reality we have, not the one we expected. Carter raised an eyebrow, then lifted his glass slightly. Two unexpected realities, then. The gesture wasn't quite a peace offering, but it was acknowledgement, progress from the open antagonism of our earlier encounters. Eleanor's voice cut through the hum of conversation. Dinner is served, if everyone would make their way to the dining room. The Thompson dining room was impressive. A long mahogany table set for 16, gleaming silver, crystal glasses, and formal china that had likely witnessed generations of family gatherings. Eleanor directed the seating with the precision of a military tactician, placing Jason and me on opposite sides of the table, separated by several relatives. Jason caught my eye across the table, his expression apologetic. I gave him a reassuring smile. This was hardly the most intimidating seating arrangement I'd navigated. I found myself between Philip and an elderly aunt, whose name I'd already forgotten. Across from me sat Diane and one of the cousins. Carter was positioned at the far end of the table from his brother, while Richard and Eleanor occupied the head and foot positions. As servers, actual hired servers, I noted with some surprise, began bringing out the first course, Eleanor tapped her glass delicately. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome everyone to our family dinner. It's always special when we can gather the extended family. Her gaze swept the table, lingering momentarily on me. Today is particularly significant as we welcome Morgan Davis, who many of you are meeting for the first time. The introduction felt like a spotlight, but I maintained a composed smile, nodding acknowledgement to the curious glances. As some of you may have heard, Eleanor continued, Morgan is not only Jason's friend, but also the CEO of Chainlink Solutions, which acquired Thompson Logistics earlier this year. The phrasing, reducing me to Jason's friend, while emphasizing my corporate role, was clearly deliberate. A reminder of the power dynamics at play, designed to position me as an outsider despite Richard's earlier welcome. A fact we were unaware of until quite recently, she added with a tight smile. But as Richard reminds me, business and personal matters needn't conflict when handled appropriately. Boundaries. The last word hung in the air, laden with implication. Several relatives exchanged glances, clearly aware of undercurrents they didn't fully understand. Richard cleared his throat. What Eleanor means to say is that we're pleased to have Morgan join us today, in both a personal and professional capacity. The Thompson and Davis families have more in common than might be immediately apparent: a commitment to excellence in business, a respect for legacy, and now, a shared future to navigate together. His diplomatic reframing smoothed the awkwardness Eleanor had created, though the underlying tension remained. As the first course was served, a delicate crab bisque, conversation resumed in pockets around the table. Philip leaned toward me. Don't mind Eleanor. She's always been territorial about family matters. He lowered his voice. Between us, I think she's more upset about losing control of the narrative than anything else. The Thompsons have always been the acquirers, not the acquired. It was a friendly acquisition, I noted. The Thompson name and operational leadership remained intact. True, but pride is a powerful force in this family. He sipped his wine. So, tell me about Chainlink. Richard mentioned supply chain software, but I'd love to hear more about how you built it. The genuine interest was refreshing. As I described Chainlink's evolution from dorm room startup to industry player, I noticed others at the table listening with varying degrees of curiosity. Started with nothing but scholarship money and student loans, Philip summarized admiringly. That's the kind of bootstrapping the original Thompson patriarch would have respected. Did you know he started with just 2 trucks and a handshake agreement with the local dairy? I didn't, I admitted. The company history wasn't central to our acquisition research. Well, it should have been, the elderly aunt beside me interjected unexpectedly. The Thompson character is in the company DNA. Always has been. Aunt Meredith, was married to the founder's son, Philip explained. She's our living corporate historian. The old woman nodded firmly. 70 years watching this family build something from nothing. Too many of the younger generation forget what that took. She fixed me with a surprisingly sharp gaze. But you wouldn't, would you? Not if you've built something yourself. The observation felt like approval, however grudging. As the main course arrived, the roast Jason had mentioned, I found conversations flowing more naturally. Diane asked thoughtful questions about tech industry challenges, while one of the cousins working in Thompson's operations had specific queries about Chainlink's software capabilities. Halfway through the meal, I caught Jason's eye across the table. He gave me a subtle thumbs up, seeming relieved at how the dinner was progressing. I had to admit it was going better than expected. While not exactly warm, most of the family was at least cordially curious. Carter remained largely silent, observing interactions with the calculating focus I'd come to recognize as a Thompson family trait. Eleanor maintained her perfect hostess demeanor, though the chill beneath was unmistakable. Richard, interestingly, seemed genuinely engaged, asking pertinent questions about Chainlink's growth strategy that blurred the line between personal dinner conversation and business discussion. As dessert was being served, an elaborate tiramisu, Richard directed a question toward Jason and me simultaneously. Morgan, Jason mentioned you two have been seeing each other for nearly 6 months now. That's becoming quite serious. The table quieted, attention focusing on us. Jason looked uncomfortable with the sudden spotlight. Yes, I replied simply. It is serious, Jason smiled across the table. Very serious. Eleanor set down her fork. And how do you plan to navigate the obvious complications? Morgan effectively controls our family business while dating our son. The potential conflicts of interest are considerable. Mom, Jason began. But I answered before he could defend. Me. We've already implemented structural changes at Chainlink to address those concerns. An oversight committee now manages all Thompson logistics matters, with me recusing myself from related decisions. Corporate structures are well and good, Eleanor pressed, but they don't address the personal entanglements, business discussions at family gatherings, divided loyalties, information that could be inadvertently shared. The implication that I might extract business intelligence through my relationship with Jason was impossible to miss. Eleanor, Richard, cautioned, but she continued. I'm merely raising practical considerations. If this relationship continues to progress, these questions will become increasingly relevant. If? Jason echoed, his tone sharpening. There's no if about it, Mom. Morgan and I are together. The corporate connection is a complication we're managing, not an obstacle to our relationship. Carter spoke up for the first time during the meal. It's a legitimate concern, Jason. You've never been involved in the business operations, but you've been around the family discussions your entire life. Information flows in ways we don't always notice. I'm well aware of corporate confidentiality. Requirements, I interjected calmly, as is Jason. We've established clear boundaries about business discussions. Besides, Jason added, I've spent years actively avoiding Thompson Logistics business talk. It's not exactly a hardship to continue that practice. Richard cleared his throat. I believe Morgan and Jason have given this matter appropriate consideration. The oversight committee structure Morgan described is a responsible approach. He glanced at his wife. As for personal matters, I trust they're capable of navigating those privately, without committee oversight. The gentle rebuke to Eleanor was subtle, but clear. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably, while others seemed to be enjoying the drama. Philip broke the tension with a laugh. Good Lord, this family makes everything so complicated. 2 people care for each other. The business situation is what it is. Adapt and move forward. Isn't that the Thompson motto? Or was it overthink and overreact? I can never remember. A ripple of relieved laughter circled the table. Even Eleanor's lips twitched slightly. Philip always did have a gift for oversimplification, she remarked, but without real heat. The conversation gradually dispersed into smaller, less charged exchanges. As coffee was served, I excused myself briefly, needing a moment away from the Thompson intensity. Following directions to the powder room, I found myself in a hallway lined with family photographs, generations of Thompsons captured in formal portraits and candid moments. I paused before a photo of Jason in his graduation cap and gown, beaming, beside his more reserved parents. Another showed a teenage Carter and Jason with fishing rods, brotherly competition evident in their postures. The images humanized the family in a way business meetings never could. Quite the gallery, isn't it? I turned to find Richard Thompson approaching, hands in his pockets, expression thoughtful. It's impressive, I acknowledged. A visual family history. 4 generations of Thompsons. He stopped beside me, studying the photographs. Each one, shaped by those who came before, each adding their own chapter to the family story. He glanced at me. Now that story includes Chainlink, and you. The observation wasn't hostile, merely contemplative. Not how either of us planned it, I noted. No. He smiled slightly. Life rarely follows our careful plans. The measure of success is how we adapt to the unexpected. He turned to face me directly. You've handled yourself well today. Eleanor's concerns aren't personal, you understand. She's protective of what we've built. The business, yes, but more importantly, the family. I understand that. I'd protect what I built just as fiercely. He nodded, seeming to approve of the response. Then we understand each other. Whatever complications arise between our business interests and your relationship with Jason, I believe we can navigate them as reasonable people. The overture seemed genuine, if cautious. I believe that too. Good. He gestured back toward the dining room. Shall we rejoin the others? I believe Eleanor is about to serve her special after-dinner cordials. A family tradition. As we walked back, I realized something significant had shifted during this dinner. The Thompson family wasn't embracing me with open arms. Eleanor remained skeptical, Carter watchful. But the outright hostility had evolved into something more nuanced. An assessment period, perhaps. A willingness to see what developed, rather, than rejecting the situation outright. For now, that was progress enough. The weeks following Eleanor's unexpected visit brought a whirlwind of activity. After discussing the situation with Jason, I agreed to a strategic alliance with the Thompson family against Sherman Wallace's hostile maneuver. Jason supported the decision, though we both recognized it would further complicate our careful separation of personal and professional matters. Some battles are worth fighting together, he said as we reviewed Wallace's proposal in our new living room, takeout containers scattered across the coffee table. If Wallace succeeds, he'll dismantle my family's legacy and threaten everything you've built with Chainlink. A joint task force was quickly assembled, my executive team working alongside Richard, Carter, and Thompson Logistics legal counsel. Eleanor, surprisingly, attended every meeting, her organizational skills and institutional knowledge proving invaluable. The woman who had once viewed me with thinly veiled contempt was now a determined ally, focused on our common adversary. During one particularly tense strategy session, Carter unexpectedly addressed the elephant in the room. I think we should acknowledge something, he said, interrupting a debate about legal countermeasures. The reason Wallace believes he can exploit divisions between our companies is because those divisions existed. My family, myself included, resisted the integration with Chainlink partly because of personal biases. The frank admission silenced the room. Richard cleared his throat uncomfortably while Eleanor studied her notepad with sudden intensity. That resistance, Carter continued, created vulnerabilities that Wallace is now targeting. If we're going to defend against this effectively, we need to commit fully to integration, not just on paper, but in practice. His gaze met mine directly, without the hostility that had characterized our early interactions. Morgan, I owe you an apology. I misjudged your intentions and capabilities. The oversight committee structure you implemented was more than just corporate governance. It was respect for our family's connection to the company. I didn't recognize that at the time. The public acknowledgement from my once fiercest critic shifted something fundamental in the room's dynamics. Richard nodded in agreement, and even Eleanor's expression softened. "Thank you, Carter," I replied simply. "I appreciate that." With this symbolic clearing of the air, our strategic planning took on new energy. Instead of defending the status quo, we began crafting a bold countermove, an accelerated integration plan that would make Thompson Logistics even more central to Chainlink's operations while preserving the Thompson family's leadership role. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than maintaining Thompson Logistics as a separate subsidiary, we would reorganize both companies into a new corporate structure. Chainlink would become the parent technology entity, while a rebranded Thompson Supply Chain Solutions would house the combined physical logistics operations. The Thompson name would gain prominence in the marketplace, while the integration would create legal barriers to Wallace's attempted maneuver. "It's more than a defensive move," I explained to our combined executive teams. "It creates genuine synergy that neither company could achieve independently." Richard, examining the financial projections, nodded approvingly. "The market will respond favorably. Wallace won't be able to match these efficiency metrics with his outdated infrastructure." As we finalized the restructuring plan, Jason and I continued settling into our new life together. The brownstone apartment gradually transformed from a collection of boxes and mismatched furniture into a genuine home. We established comfortable routines, morning coffee on the small balcony, weekend explorations of the neighborhood, quiet evenings grading papers or reviewing code side by side. "It's strange," Jason remarked one evening as we prepared dinner together. "A few months ago, my family viewed you as a threat. Now you're collaborating to save the family business." "Life has a way of rearranging our preconceptions," I replied, thinking of my own journey from concealing my connection to Thompson Logistics to openly partnering with the family. "Though I'm not sure your mother has completely warmed to me yet," Jason chuckled. "Mom doesn't warm to people. She either actively opposes them or gradually accepts them into her orbit. The fact that she's consulting you on strategy rather than plotting against you is practically a declaration of love in Eleanor Thompson terms." There was truth in his teasing. Eleanor remained formal in our interactions, but the underlying hostility had transformed into something resembling respect. During a private moment after one strategy session, she even made a surprisingly personal overture. "Jason mentioned you both will be attending the Education Foundation Gala next weekend," she said as we gathered our materials. "I happened to notice your name on the host committee." "Yes, I've supported their STEM initiatives for several years," I explained. "Their work aligning education with industry needs is impressive." She nodded, seeming to consider something. "If you wouldn't find it presumptuous, I'd be happy to introduce you to some of the foundation's major donors. Many of them are looking for exactly the kind of industry partnership Chainlink could offer." The offer, using her social connections to benefit my company, was a significant gesture from a woman who had once accused me of exploiting her family. "I'd appreciate that, Eleanor. Thank you." Her expression remained composed, but something in her eyes softened momentarily. "We may have begun our acquaintance under unfortunate circumstances, Morgan, but I've come to respect your business acumen and your commitment to Jason. Perhaps we can build on that foundation going forward." It wasn't quite an olive branch, but it was a recognition that our connection, through Jason, through business, through circumstances neither of us had planned, was now a permanent feature of both our lives. The restructuring announcement was scheduled for Monday morning, a joint press release followed by investor calls and media interviews. The weekend before, Jason and I attended the Education Foundation Gala, where Eleanor made good on her promise, introducing me to influential donors and community leaders. Richard and Carter circulated as well, the United Family Front sending its own subtle message to Boston's business community. Sherman Wallace was also in attendance, his expression darkening, when he spotted me engaged in animated conversation with one of his own major investors. Eleanor, monitoring the room with practiced skill, smoothly intercepted him before he could approach. "Quite the family alliance you've engineered," he commented later, cornering me briefly at the bar. "Impressive, considering the Thompsons' legendary resistance to outsiders." "Perhaps you misunderstood their priorities," I replied mildly. "The Thompson family values legacy and integrity. As do I." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The restructuring rumors are circulating, you know. Clever move, if you can execute it before my legal team files their challenge." "I'm not discussing business matters tonight, Sherman. This is a charity event." "Everything's business, Morgan." He sipped his drink. "But enjoy the party. Monday will bring a different conversation entirely." He walked away, leaving a chill that had nothing to do with the ballroom's temperature. Jason appeared at my side moments later. Was that Wallace? What did he want? "To rattle me," I admitted. "He knows about the restructuring plan." Jason's expression darkened. "Do we need to accelerate the timeline?" "No. Everything's in place for Monday. Let's not let him spoil tonight." The remainder of the evening passed pleasantly, though I noticed increased communication between Richard, Carter, and their legal team throughout the event. The Thompson defensive instincts were fully activated by Wallace's veiled threat. Sunday morning brought the first complication. Our legal counsel called as Jason and I were enjoying coffee on the balcony, informing me that Wallace's team had filed for an emergency injunction against any restructuring of Thompson Logistics, claiming violation of specific acquisition terms. "He's moving faster than we anticipated," the lawyer explained. "The filing itself isn't strong, but it could delay implementation while the court reviews the claims." I immediately contacted Richard, who had already received similar notification. "We need to accelerate," he insisted. "If we can execute the key structural changes before a judge reviews the filing." "That's pushing legal boundaries," I cautioned. "Wallace is counting on our caution," Richard countered. "Sometimes boldness is the only appropriate response to aggression." After consulting with our respective teams, we agreed to move the restructuring announcement to Sunday evening, a highly unusual timing that would itself generate media attention, and implement the organizational changes immediately rather than phasing them in as originally planned. The Thompson estate became our impromptu command center, with executives, lawyers, and communications specialists working frantically to compress a week's worth of preparations into hours. Jason, despite his usual distance from family business matters, rolled up his sleeves to help, brewing endless pots of coffee and organizing meal deliveries as the day stretched into evening. Eleanor, surprisingly, became my direct partner in the chaos, her organizational efficiency complementing my technical knowledge as we finalized the integration documents, with Thompson Logistics organizational charts spread across the dining room table. We worked side by side, identifying key positions and reporting structures for the new combined entity. "You know," she remarked during a rare quiet moment, "when Jason was growing up, I always imagined him following the Thompson tradition, joining the family business, eventually taking leadership. His decision to teach instead felt like rejection of everything Richard and I had built." I glanced up, surprised by the personal disclosure. "I see now that was unfair," she continued, reorganizing a stack of personnel files. "Jason found his own path, his own way to build something meaningful, just as you did with Chainlink." She met my gaze directly. "Sometimes the most impressive legacies aren't the ones we inherit, but the ones we create ourselves." The observation felt like a significant acknowledgement, not just of my professional accomplishments, but of the validity of both Jason's and my life choices. "Thank you, Eleanor. That means a lot. Before she could respond, Carter burst into the dining room. Wallace is making moves. He's contacted 3 of our major clients, claiming the company is in transition and offering preferential rates to switch to his services. That's market manipulation, I objected. It's ruthless business, Richard corrected, joining us with his phone in hand. And if our clients believe there's uncertainty about our future, they might jump ship as a precaution. Then we move now, I decided. Release the announcement, begin the official integration, and contact those clients directly. We need to project absolute confidence. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Press releases finalized, client calls made, legal documents executed. By midnight, the restructuring was officially underway, with the first public announcement scheduled for the pre-market news cycle. As the various teams began dispersing, Carter approached me in the hallway. That was impressive crisis management, he acknowledged. Dad was right about you. Right about what? That you're exactly what Thompson Logistics needed, not just technically, but temperamentally. The determination to build something lasting. He extended his hand. Welcome to the family, Morgan. Officially. The gesture, so different from our early antagonistic interactions, felt like closing a chapter. I shook his hand firmly. Thank you, Carter. Jason found me gathering my things in the study, exhaustion evident in both our postures, but a sense of accomplishment outweighing the fatigue. You know, he said, helping me collect scattered notes. When I first introduced you to my family, I never imagined you'd end up saving the family business together. Life's full of unexpected twists, I agreed. Though I'm pretty sure your mother still wishes you'd fallen for a nice society girl with no corporate ambitions. Actually, he said, his expression turning serious. I had an interesting conversation with Mom earlier. She admitted that she's impressed by you, not just professionally, but by how you've handled everything. The way you've balanced respect for the Thompson legacy with your own vision for Chainlink. I raised an eyebrow skeptically. Eleanor Thompson said that, out loud? More or less. He smiled. In her own Eleanor way, with lots of qualifiers and roundabout phrasing, but the sentiment was clear. He took my hand. She also asked about our long-term plans. Long-term plans? You know, future, commitment, the kinds of things mothers start hinting about when they've decided someone might be acceptable for their son after all. The implication hung in the air between us, neither of us quite ready to directly address it, but both acknowledging its presence. One corporate crisis at a time, I said lightly, though my heart rate had accelerated. Let's get through this restructuring before we tackle any other major life changes. His smile told me he understood the non-answer for what it was. Not reluctance, but proper prioritization. Fair enough, but consider yourself warned. Once this Wallace situation is resolved, you may find yourself facing a very different proposition. The wah. Next morning brought the public phase of our counter-move. The business press exploded with the unexpected Sunday announcement of the Chainlink Thompson integration. Financial analysts scrambled to assess the restructuring, initially expressing skepticism, but gradually recognizing the strategic advantages of the combined entity. Wallace's legal challenge stalled in the face of the completed organizational changes. His emergency injunction request was denied by a judge who determined that the acquisition terms actually supported rather than prohibited the type of integration we'd implemented. By Friday, the market had rendered its verdict. Chainlink's stock rose 14% while Wallace Industries fell 8% amid rumors that his attempted hostile maneuver had alienated key investors. The 3 clients he'd approached all recommitted to long-term contracts with the newly structured Thompson Supply Chain Solutions. The victory celebration was held at Philip Thompson's surprisingly bohemian loft apartment, neutral territory that felt symbolically appropriate. Executives from both companies mingled easily, the forced collaboration of the past week having forged unexpected connections and mutual respect. Richard raised a toast halfway through the evening. To successful partnerships, corporate and personal. His gaze moved meaningfully between Jason and me. And to family, in all its evolving forms. Eleanor, standing beside him, nodded her agreement, her usual reserve softened by genuine satisfaction. Carter, across the room, raised his glass with a smile that contained none of his former hostility. Later, as the party wound down, Jason led me out onto Philip's rooftop terrace. The Boston skyline glittered against the night sky. The lights of financial district buildings where both Chainlink and Thompson now operated shining particularly bright. "Quite a week," I observed, leaning against the railing. "Quite a journey," Jason corrected. "From being accused of gold digging to being a corporate savior in less than a year." I laughed. Not exactly how I planned my career path, or how I planned my personal life. He turned to face me fully, but I wouldn't change any of it. The complications, the conflicts, even my family's initial resistance, all of it led us here, together. "Your family has come around surprisingly well," I acknowledged. "Even your mother seems to have accepted me." "Accepted you?" "Morgan, she's practically planning our wedding. I heard her discussing preferred caterers with Diane when she thought I wasn't listening." I raised an eyebrow. "Getting ahead of herself, isn't she?" "Maybe." His expression grew serious as he reached into his pocket. Or maybe she just recognized the inevitable a little sooner than we did. He withdrew a small velvet box, and my breath caught. "Jason, I had a whole speech prepared," he said, a nervous smile playing on his lips. "About timing and circumstances and how some things just feel right despite all the complications. But standing here now, I realize it's actually very simple." He opened the box, revealing a vintage-style emerald ring. "I love you, Morgan. Not your company, not your success. Just you, the brilliant, determined, compassionate woman who saw me for exactly who I am from the start." He took a deep breath. "Will you marry me?" The question hung in the crisp evening air, a moment suspended between our complicated past and potential future. In that moment, all the corporate maneuvering, family tensions, and careful boundaries we'd navigated seemed to fall away, leaving only the essential truth. We had found in each other something worth fighting for. "Yes," I said simply, my voice steady despite the emotion welling within me. "Yes, I will." As he slid the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit, naturally. I couldn't help but appreciate the full circle of our journey. The woman once dismissively labeled a gold digger was now officially joining the Thompson family, bringing with her not financial need but corporate strength, not manipulation, but genuine partnership. Later that evening, as we shared our news with the remaining party guests, Eleanor approached me during a quiet moment. Her expression was complex. Maternal pride mingled with something that looked remarkably like respect. "I owe you an apology, Morgan," she said, her voice low and sincere. "My assumptions about your intentions toward Jason, toward our family, were deeply unfair." "Thank you, Eleanor," I replied, genuinely touched by the acknowledgement. Though in fairness, the circumstances were unusual. They were. A small smile touched her lips. But extraordinary circumstances often reveal true character. Yours has proven exceptional. Coming from Eleanor Thompson, this was high praise indeed. "Welcome to the family," she added, briefly touching my arm before rejoining Richard across the room. As the celebration continued around us, Jason found my hand, his thumb brushing across the new ring. "Happy?" he asked softly. I surveyed the room, Richard and Eleanor in animated conversation with Rachel about expansion opportunities, Carter discussing implementation timelines with our operations team, Philip regaling my developers with family, stories they were eagerly absorbing. The personal and professional worlds we'd tried so carefully to keep separate had ultimately merged into something stronger than either could have been alone. Not through calculation or manipulation, but through mutual respect, shared values, and genuine connection. Yes, I answered honestly. Happier than I ever expected to be. The journey from being misjudged as a gold digger to finding both professional alliance and personal acceptance with the Thompson family hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, of frustration, of wondering whether the complications were worth navigating. But standing there with Jason, surrounded by what had become our extended family, biological and corporate, I knew with absolute certainty. Some things in life are worth fighting for, worth the complexity and challenges. Not gold or status or power, but the authentic connections we forge with others who truly see us for who we are. And sometimes, life's greatest plot twists lead us exactly where we're meant to be. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories, ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.